On this episode of Delivering Marketing Joy, we talk with Brett Schaffer about what it's like to go from operations to sales and why that helps. Hey there, and welcome to another edition of Delivering Marketing Joy. I am your host, Kirby Hasseman, and I'm really excited today. I have a brand new guest, Brett Schaffer, MAS, who's the Midwest Regional Sales Manager for Primeline, a supplier in the promotional products industry. Brett, thanks so much for taking the time.
My pleasure, Kirby. Thank you for having me.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So one of the things I know about you is you've recently changed roles. I'm always interested about that, because sometimes that's a big change. So why did you decide to make that leap?
I wish I could count on all of my digits, how many times I've changed roles through the years. Been in this business now for 17 years as a full-time career. Yeah. Of course, as you know, I was raised in this world,
Yep.
So it's nothing new to me. For the first 12 years working with my family, I pretty much took on every single role there was to do in a small business. You know how that goes,
Yep.
from sweeping floors to cleaning windows to running pad print machines, etc. I've done it all.
Yeah.
So I switched when I moved on from Soundline on up to Points of Light into the operations side. Found it extraordinarily challenging and rewarding. It was great to get the mechanical side of my brain going. Really enjoyed it quite a bit. And of course, I carried that on over down to Jetline when we relocated down to the Carolinas here. Mm-hmm. And I've enjoyed a good 3-year run on the operations side here in Gaffney, South Carolina. But frankly, as you see here, I'm much more extroverted than I am introverted. So when I spend the past 3 years looking at the inside of a warehouse and managing that operation, I had a little bit of an itch to get back out in the field and be amongst the people, if you will. It is very much a relationship business, and I was really missing that side of the business. So it was an easy transition back into the sales side, and the past 6 weeks have been really tremendous. And frankly, I'm really lucky to be out in the Midwest because those Midwestern people are some really nice folks. I've had a really nice foray back into the field, and it's been a nice, smooth transition. So it has not been such a bad thing. So to answer the question, sum it all up, been there before, done that, wanted to get back to it. That's really what it comes down to.
Well, it's funny. I mean, one of the things about the promotional products industry, and people talk about it all the time, it's almost cliche, right? Is people talk about how nice and how fun the people of the industry are. So to hear you say that's not a huge surprise to me, and so I'm glad that it's going well.
Right.
So because you've seen both sides, you've had the operations, you've had the sales, you've seen different sides, not only of multiple companies, but of the company you're in. Why do you think it's or do you think it's valuable to be able to see both those sides?
I think it's extraordinarily valuable. On top of all those other tasks I listed earlier, I've also done supply chain. Mm-hmm. So I've been up many nights talking with our factories over in China. I have a firm understanding of the entire process from start to finish. Right. And I think that's really valuable to my clients because I'm a realist. Because I know what goes into the process, I am not out there overselling. Mm-hmm. On top of that, I've instructed all of my folks at the plant in Jetline, and I certainly know go very deep up in the Bridgeport facility up in Primeline as well, not to change their phone numbers on me, because right now in my pocket I have an encyclopedia of contact information, and I could literally get down to the machine level if something goes wrong with their order. Yeah. So there is a tremendous amount of value in having that understanding on the operations side, and believe me, I do bring that to the table when discussing my value proposition.
Yeah, it's funny. I often say, Brett, that I am in the business on the distributor side. I say I'm in the business of making promises for other people. That's my job, right? So I like to do business with people who know how to keep their promises. So I think that is an interesting value proposition that you bring up. So that's cool. So many in our industry, and you sort of alluded to it just a little bit ago, know that your dad is sort of a legend in our industry. So and I don't know if you know this, but my dad worked in the industry as well, right? Yeah. So I had a little bit of a similar thing, but I always wonder what it's like to follow those kind of footsteps. So is it hard to create your own way?
Well, you tell me. No, I'll save my question for the end. I know how this goes. Tell me if you've heard this phrase before, this terminology, promo brat. Have you heard that term?
Yeah, I actually have. Yeah.
Have you? Oh, too bad. I thought I actually created that.
Yeah.
So just throwing it out there to see. But I actually started referring to all of us second generation folks as promo brats, and it's interesting because. Right now, you can find some promo brats that are 20 years old, and you can find some that are 60, 70 years old. So this is a family-oriented business. There's a lot of second and even third-generation folks coming into it. Yeah. Certainly, my father has created. He's a pioneer. He certainly helped bring a level of professionalism to this business, along with a lot of his peers from his time when we were struggling for an identity as a business.
Yeah.
Legend is a good word, and I've learned a lot from him through the years. And were it not for him, obviously, I wouldn't be in this particular position with the company I'm with today. I did try to avoid the promotional products role. After college, I was doing my own thing for about 8 years, and when they had an offer on the table to purchase their company, that's about the time where I said, you know what, why don't I give it a try? And that's when I moved into this world for the past 17 years. But I find myself to be a genetic blend of both my father and my mother. So I never tried to be like him. I am carving my own way and carving my own path. And certainly I have a tremendous amount of respect for what he's done for our business, for this industry as a whole. And I don't think it's fair to try to walk in anybody's footsteps. That you should be carving your own path. It's kind of funny because the first few years of me getting involved in this business, I was always referred to as Joel's son, and in fact, when he was elected to the PPI Hall of Fame a few months back, I actually alluded to that in my introductory remarks before we brought him on stage. I said, I'm Brett Schaffer. You may know me as Joel's son. But through the years recently, he's relayed to me that people have actually come up to him and said, "Oh, are you Brett's father?" So it turned about as fair play, I suppose. But no, I never found it to be terribly difficult to swim in the same ocean with him, and he's been a tremendous mentor, and he's a giver. So I think he makes it easy for everybody around him.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. I have two thoughts on that. Number one is just I have always admired your dad. I've been in the industry for a while, and I always noticed that he was a little bit different on the supplier side in that he was educating. And I think we need more people that elevate and educate our industry so that we're not just selling product, right? And so I think he was, like you said, a pioneer on that. And then the other piece that occurred to me as you were saying all this stuff is that you started by sweeping floors and running a pad printing machine. And in my experience, the second generation, third generation folks who do that tend to succeed. Right? They weren't handed anything. They had to earn it. And so that's awesome. So you've answered my 3 questions. You get to ask me one. So do you have one for me?
I do. I mentioned struggling for an identity, and I think that we continually do that. We get in our daily life. Hey, Kirby, what do you do for a living? Well, I sell pens. I sell imprinted merchandise. What does that mean? Yeah. And, we struggle for an identity. There's no real clear definition for what it is we do. You can't sum it up in a couple words. And maybe I'm speaking for myself to simplify it so much. However, we've always debated what we call the stuff that we sell. We call it swag. Do we call it tchotchkes? God forbid we call it CPS or trinkets and trash. Right. Promotional products has been one that we've all seemed to settle on in recent years. But I struggle with how we classify what we do for a living as an industry. Mm-hmm. To me, industry connotes raw goods being manufactured into product. In fact, that is the literal definition of industry. Right. And that certainly happens to an extent here, certainly in the U.S., but there's not a whole lot of manufacturing going on. So what do you think about that word, industry, to define the promotional products marketplace? Is it a misnomer?
No, it's a great question. A deep one, right? So I think my thought process, and I tend to think through our industry, because I don't think we do as an industry, think through it from the end user's perspective. And I guess I sort of answered this the way I answered. Somebody asked me, how do you communicate with clients recently? And my answer was, however the hell they want to communicate. So if they want to Snapchat me, that's how I'm going to go back. Well, I kind of think the same way about describing our industry. Whenever people complain about the idea of calling what we do swag, I always think that's funny. Because if my clients want to call it swag, swag it is, right? However they relate to it, I think is totally appropriate. And you're right. If we try to list the things that we can imprint, that's not a great way for us to go to market, right? So I think the one I land on personally is promotional premiums, because I think it elevates it a little bit. But I think that ours is an industry that ultimately the goal is to get in a conversation so you can explain it to the client. And so I try to meet people where they are, if that makes any sense.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
But do you like the word industry? Do you think that makes sense? Do you think we are an actual industry, or are we a sector?
Yeah, no, I think we are an industry. Because again, I think it's one of those things where you say, well, is this the Webster's definition of it, or at the end of the day, do you look around and our buddy Bill Petrie would say, if three guys in the bar think it's a catch, right? Well, I sort of think if three guys in the bar or gals in the bar think it's an industry, it's an industry. So I think sometimes it's the Occam's razor answer. The simplest answer is often the correct one.
I'll go with that.
Yeah. Cool, man. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it. And we'll have to do it again, okay?
You got it, Kirby. Thank you.
You bet. That wraps up another Delivering Marketing Joy. We'll see you next time.